How's everybody doing? Good? Having a good show? A lot of cool automations. Cool. So I'm Lior Lazari, CEO of inVia Robotics. We provide robotics and software solutions to the fulfillment industry.
Hello, my name's Maggie Barnett. I'm the COO of ShipHero, and we provide WMS systems and also e-commerce fulfillment in the US and in Canada.
And we've been working with ShipHero for a while now and decided, hey, why not? Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of what we've been up to.
Hello, I'm Aaron Rubin, CEO of ShipHero. I'm in our Jacksonville, Florida facility. And in this facility, we use robotics from a company called inVia. inVia's model is a bit unique, so I want to explain how it works and why we like them. So inVia's robots are fairly simple robots, so they're not cobots. They, however, serve a really important function, which is reducing walk. So in the warehouse, the two main things people don't like is number one, exceptions, right? So employees in the warehouse hate when they're supposed to do something or they hit the wrong button and they're just stuck, right? And they gotta wait for someone to come and help them. They hate that. That's number one. I think we do a pretty good job in our software of reducing those and making them easier to self-handle. The second thing they hate is walking. Packing is rewarding, picking is rewarding, inventory control is rewarding, but the walking is a grind. And it's hard to avoid, right? So our facilities are hundreds of thousands of square feet. You're gonna have to walk, or you can have your robots walk for you. So in order to get the robots to walk for you, you have to rethink how the picking area is designed. So the way that this picking area is designed is there's a robot section, so all this stuff here, that's filled with product that's in the robot zone. And then you've got two walls. There's a pick wall here, and I don't think you can see, but there's a wall that looks the exact same over here. Those are your handoffs between the humans and the robots. So the humans live on the outside of the wall, the robots live on the inside of the wall. So the way that works is when product comes in, a human scans it into one of those brown totes you see there and loads it up on the wall. The robot then comes, grabs it, and puts it away. Later, when there's an order for that, the robot will take that same carton and load it onto the pick wall for a human to then pick up and grab the product out of and pick the order that needs to go out that day. Once that's done, the robot grabs that carton and puts it back on the shelf. So the humans, instead of walking through the entire shelves, just walk to the put wall to load that. So your inventory control only walks till here, saves them hundreds of feet of walking on each replenishment. And then your pickers are only walking to the pick wall, again, not walking through the entire facility. They are fairly adjustable. So while you have to map your locations, they're not fixed in placement. So if you ever needed to expand or move to a different facility, it's relatively inexpensive compared to some more complex solutions. The downside is it is more work to set up, it's more complicated to explain. That's how we use inVia Robotics in our own facilities to drive down labor costs and increase output for the facility.
All right. Cool. So high level, we've integrated our solutions together and we're really happy with the success and how it's been. So from a high level point of view, what drove you guys to modernize the warehouse?
Well, I think what I want to do is take a step back because ShipHero actually has two divisions. We're a WMS provider. We have been around for about 10 years. We have 4,000 customers who use our WMS in their warehouses. About 3 years ago, we started our own fulfillment division, and now we have about 500 customers in that division across 8 warehouses and 1 million square feet. So we're kind of this cool hybrid in working with inVia, is that we're a software company, but we also actually use the robots, not just in our customers' warehouses, but in our warehouses. So having that sort of knowledge on both sides, I just want you to know that's kind of like where we're coming from. So when we look at the need to modernize, we really were looking at it from our fulfillment side. And in fulfillment, there's really only two things that you can control that are your most expensive on your P&L. There's two things. There's rent and there's labor. So when we looked at rent, rents are going up no matter what. I don't know if any of you are in warehousing or have to go out and do those leases, but it's not fun. Over the last 18 months, trying to get a warehouse in Vancouver, LA, Las Vegas, Dallas, Fort Worth, it's gone up about 30%. It's softening now, but rent is going to be rent. It's a fixed cost, basically. So we always look at labor when we want to modernize, because that's where it's going to have the biggest impact for us. So when we looked at labor, we thought, we can't just fire everyone and still have the same amount of productivity, so what can we do? So we started looking at robotics. And one of the coolest things that we wanted to explore during this was, what could we replace in our current warehouses? What activities? And the one thing that I thought that when we really looked at it was, what's repetitive? What is a repetitive process that we can replace? And that's what's so great about inVia, because there are certain, what we do with the pick wall, that's just a repetitive process that no one wants to keep doing. So I know a lot of people say, oh, these robots are going to replace humans, but honestly, they're not, in the sense that when we hire temp workers in Allentown, Pennsylvania, let's say, it used to be $18, now it's $25 an hour. They were picking, and once we actually got them trained up, it was so repetitive that they would turn out. They wouldn't want to do that job anymore. So we thought, okay, if we can replace this repetitive action with an amazing technology, it does a few things. One, it'll lower our cost per pick, which we need to do. Average cost per pick is, let's say, 33 cents now, and we can get that down with inVia. And also, when we find great temp workers, we can actually elevate them into better positions with tasks that aren't repetitive, that are more creative focused. So that was the main thing, is bottom line, and then creating great teams within our warehouses.
Thank you. So there's, upgrading a warehouse, right, that uses temp laborers, to modernizing it and using technology that, is maybe light years ahead, right, of what the temp laborers are used to running and doing that. What was the biggest elements of the upgrade that basically made a big impact to your operation?
So one of the biggest things that we found with inVia that they helped us do is just reduce our footprint within the warehouse of where we actually needed to pick from. So let's say you have 50,000 square feet or 500,000 square feet. You want to reduce the place, similar to what Aaron was saying in the video, of where your pickers are actually picking. You don't want them wandering the aisles for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to just pay people to walk around and not actually get to pick. Two, if they are wandering through the aisles and something goes wrong, it's going to take 7 to 10 minutes for them to actually find a manager to fix that. So you want to condense that picking area as much as possible. And inVia condensed our picking area by about 75%, which is huge. So that pick wall has saved us so much time and energy, and again, has improved our teammates' experience, because if something goes wrong now, they can find a manager in 1 to 2 minutes. They're not just wandering. So there's multiple reasons for it, but seeing that change was huge. Another thing that was very cool is some of the reporting. So right now, you could have, it's an 80-20 rule. 20% of your clients move 80% of your SKUs very fast. And you want to keep those high velocity SKUs in that pick area. With working with inVia, we were able to find that there were 2,000 SKUs taking up 7,500 locations that hadn't been sold in 6 months. So for me, that's like having beautiful beach property and not wanting to build on it or have some sort of a view. It's just it was such a waste, and we didn't even know it was there. So using the systems that Lior and team have created, we were able to say, okay, let's eject those SKUs, let's get some high moving velocity SKUs in that area so that we can increase the pick flow. So that was just a huge, like it opened our eyes like crazy. So that was exciting. And then some of the other exciting areas were just SKU consolidation. So we would have a single SKU across, let's say 20 to 25 totes. Total waste of space. Running a report with inVia and working with the robots, we can consolidate all of those SKUs into 1 or 2 totes. So the consolidation of those units, again, with labor being so expensive and also rents being fixed and just increasing, we needed to have that help with inVia to really make every square foot of our warehouses working effectively.
Yeah, and I would add, actually working with ShipHero, we did a much tighter integration that we normally do to account for these kind of workflows. So basically, the system now, by itself, ShipHero calculates, where do we need to store certain locations, what do some of the aging SKUs that we're calling, which ones are getting older, and automatically have the robotic system ejected. So it's becoming part of the workflow. So during on a day-to-day basis, you're sort of organizing the warehouse as well as picking and getting everything out there. And as you know, usually in a warehouse, after a while, things become, the world likes to be in chaos, right? You're always trying to bring it closer. And the nice thing with the system and the fact that we're able to do a much tighter integration where when a robot picks a container, it's updating the database. So everything is done in real time. We're able to organize everything in there. So that was actually and their team has been amazing in integrating.
Yeah, I was going to say, for better or for worse, we are on the phone with inVia all day, and I think that's also what makes the integration so tight and effective, is that our learning loops are so fast. When we're able to see something in a workflow, see that totes are too small or totes are too big, we're able to iterate on that so quickly, where usually that would take weeks or months, but since we both have engineering teams, it goes pretty seamlessly.
Yeah. So one of the biggest problems, right, is keeping SLA, making sure the orders are going out the door. And a lot of times, when we talk to customers like yours who have to set up warehouses, you can't shut down the warehouse. So you have to implement the system while you're maintaining the SLA. Because you talk a little bit about that, how you can introduce a system that is fairly complex, but still make sure that all these orders are going out the door. Right?
Yeah, so running a warehouse is difficult in general. I think creating change within a warehouse is always very difficult because everyone's kind of stuck in their ways. Learning new processes is very difficult. Bringing in robots, people automatically think, oh, my job's going away. So there's some resistance at first that can be tough. But one of the reasons we chose inVia was that we could roll this out in phases. And the idea that we could continue fulfilling orders through a part of the warehouse while selectively moving SKUs into the pick zone was incredible because, again, we can't miss SLAs. That's our whole business. If it comes in before noon, we have to ship same day, period. There's no excuses. Our customers do not care that we're trying to become more efficient. And inVia was really good in kind of helping us with those workflow plans. But no matter what, it's difficult, but having a good partner go through it, we did hit most of our SLAs through the whole part. It was just, it's always tough creating change within a warehouse.
So what lessons did we both learn? And I think we can both speak about it. And again, good and bad, right? Because obviously, nothing, always, like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. So what some of the stuff that was good and some of the stuff that's bad, and I'll cover that as well.
So I think it's a good question because hindsight's 2020. You would think, oh, you shouldn't start to work on this at 6 a.m. when the first shift is coming in, or you shouldn't have people working to input SKUs, inject SKUs into pick locations while the trucks for UPS, FedEx, USPS are coming at 3 o'clock. So it was kind of the easy stuff that, in hindsight, we should have sat down and said, okay, one manager is just in charge of this move and this implementation. They're going to work from, 6 p.m. at night to midnight on this as opposed to prime time. So just easy things that we just learn as operators we could have done better, but very solvable. And now our customers on our SaaS platform who ask about inVia Robotics and any other sort of integration is we pass on those lessons. So I feel like someone will get the benefit of that pain, but that was really the biggest lesson, was just workforce management throughout the integration. So.
And I think, from our side too, right, change management is always the same on that side. And like Maggie said, having our teams connected almost in real time, we're able to solve problems in real time. And you have to do that, like you mentioned, because the orders have to go out the door. So if there's any issues, if there's anything, and really having, I think, the right people at the right level to solve these problems, that really helped us push through and move through very quickly. Because again, problems will happen, things, there's a lot of planning that is done, but you're gonna miss some things. But having the right people at the right positions, and again, we had access, both, to our CTOs are talking together, right, to get this stuff going, and that really helped speed things along. So really.
Yeah, and I would say too, and it's not just because Lior's here and we're negotiating our next deal, and I kind of wanted a couple extra points, but I wish I would have done this sooner. That is one of the biggest lessons I learned, is that us waiting, like there is never going to be a good time. So I just wish we would have started earlier. That's always my thing. It's like, if we just would have done this 6 months earlier, we'd already be through this and saving this money. So that is a big lesson.
Thank you, appreciate that. So kind of talking about a little bit of segue, so what kind of upgrades and expansions are you planning for next year and beyond?
So we are ready to, we've already kind of purchased most of the equipment for our Allentown location. That's 150,000 square feet in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We have run 2 shifts there, 7 days a week, about 60 people total. So we're excited from our learnings from Jacksonville, which was the original implementation. We'll move into Allentown. After that, we'll go into Vegas. In Vegas, we have 175,000 square feet. So we'll be working there as well. Same thing, 2 shifts, 7 days a week, about 75 people. But when it comes to features, I know I have my list, but I don't know if that's fair to go into now. But what are the deployments?
Well, maybe I'll ask like one question, which is completely ad lib. So what feature would you wish the robots did that we're not doing today? Or any other robots that you've seen or something?
I think the management of time, so we have like Workforce Hero, which you want to know what anyone in your facility is doing at any time. And if you could have a robot that was a manager, like divvying out tasks at any given point, I think that would be to show accountability, and that actually changes your unit economics. Like I'd want it to be financially tied in, and then also like a management aspect. So I would want a lot, but I think it would be kind of like that oversight of who's doing what, where, that workforce planning, I think would be, I mean, can they pack orders? I could say the whole thing. Problem solve.
Yeah, chasing after employees to bring them back to the warehouse.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, making sure breaks end on time, things of that nature.
Cool. So if you don't mind, I'll ask a couple more questions, and I don't know if you guys have any questions. We'd love to also entertain that as well. So in your view, where do you think the industry is going to go to, right? So you guys are in the fulfillment space, and you're fulfilling on behalf of many of your customers, right? And I think you have very tight SLAs, right? Very demanding customers, right?
Yes.
Where do you think the industry is going to go to? You think that's going to sustain itself? Is that going to get, are the SLAs going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, which like what Amazon is trying to do, or it's going to loosen up, or where do you see that's going?
Well, one thing I think is just margin integrity. Like our merchants need to make a certain amount per shipment. So cost is always going to be the biggest driver. What we're seeing is not same day, next hour, next minute delivery, so much as can you deliver it within 3 days for the right price, depending on what the item is. Again, it's different if it's a white glove merchant that's selling something that costs $1,000 or $350 versus, a hairbrush that is $6. Like it's going to change by product line, but I think what we're seeing is just that crunch on margins, and with inflation and credit tightening up, it's very difficult for people. They would rather just spend maintain their X margin and get it there in 2 to 3 days. Again, unless it's a luxury good, that would have to be next day or same day. That's what we're kind of seeing on the SLA side.
Yeah, and on our side, we're seeing more and more customers, I mean, trying to decrease their costs and increase their profit margins. We're seeing that driven actually throughout, and I think the industry in general, we're seeing a lot of public companies, everybody's trying to post higher earnings, and I'm sure you guys are in the same boat. So.
And I think what's interesting when it comes to the earnings piece and kind of where you spend your capital, I think, Lior, if you could talk a little bit about the RaaS model and like how people are accepting that or have questions about it, because I know I didn't want to invest in hardware. I'd rather, if something breaks, I want you to fix it, and, as opposed to having to go source a new robot. So can you talk to me about what you're seeing? Are people really accepting it like we are? Maybe.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and in fact, I think one of the things that's happening in the automation industry in general is putting more accountability in the right place, right? So we think the RaaS, or robotic as a service, puts the accountability in the right location, right? So we're in a robotics company, we're an automation company. We are in charge of the robots, of the automation, of the productivity of the robots. In fact, the way our transactions is working is based on how productive the robots are, not how many robots are in your facilities. And that makes things very aligned because, from ShipHero's perspective, they're trying to drive demand. They're trying to see how can we get as many customers, as many orders as possible. And from our side, we're in charge of making sure that our robots are able to meet that demand as efficiently as possible. In fact, our goal is to limit and to try to get not as many robots in the warehouse, actually as little robots, right? If we can somehow develop one robot that is super fast, that can fulfill all that stuff, that's up to us because that's part of our profit margins, right? If we use too many robots, we end up taking that hit. And I think that aligns very well because a lot of times when you buy automation, you might buy extra, you might buy too much, and now you're in charge of those productivities because if those robots are not productive, you're still paying for that many robots. And as a warehouse or a 3PL, that's not your job. You're not worried about, well, how can I make this robot more productive? We should let that the robotics company, right? We basically take a bunch of engineers, shove them in a dark room, and they like it, by the way. Don't worry about that. But make them optimize the robots. But like I mentioned, I think the good thing about it is it aligns the incentives. Right, so our incentive is to try to make the robots as productive as possible, and Maggie's, and ShipHero's incentive is to try to drive as much volume as possible. And I think that's how the industry can really flourish, and putting the right people in the right places. Thank you for that question. Anybody has any questions that you'd like us to answer?
Any questions, anyone? Anyone? Any questions?
I think too, we think about potential questions. One of the things that when I talk to a lot of 3PL owners, maybe they only have 1 or 2 facilities, and they're like, is it worth it to have this installation of robots? And for me, I knew that we would be, if it worked, which it is, rolling it out into our network. So it makes sense. Like we have capital, we have investors, but what do you think right now, square footage wise or volume wise, how are you seeing your customer and seeing when is it that time to say, let's get some robots?
Yeah. So the way we really look at it is probably in the number of SKUs that you have to manage. And the number of SKUs sort of grows, right, with the space. So if you're managing anything below 1,000 SKUs, probably robotics, you could use it, but if you're moving gold bars and you don't want anybody touching it and it's costing you, not that you're actually getting a lot of profit from these gold bars, right? But you're worried about a minimum wage employee stealing like iPhones, and what I mean gold bars, right? They're probably worth more than gold bars now.
Yeah.
But any kind of like high volume, so that makes sense at a lower SKUs. But usually for the small trinkets, for the small kind of things, anything below 1,000 doesn't make much sense because you only have maybe you should have 2 or 3 full-time employees doing that work over one shift, being able to fulfill that. The problems that start occurring is whenever you have a lot of SKUs. So a lot of our customers, are dealing with 20,000 SKUs, 30,000 SKUs, up to 100,000 SKUs, even more. When you're at those volumes, what happens is it's not that you're fulfilling every one of those. Let's say you have 20,000 SKUs in your warehouse, that you're fulfilling 20,000 SKUs going out the door, is that you might be touching like 5 or 10% of them per day, and every day it's a different random set.
Yeah.
So trying to access them, trying to get to them, that's where you end up spending a lot of labor, and this is where our robots are able to help. Basically what they do is they shrink the warehouse in some sense. If you have a 100,000 square foot facility, they take all these containers and in real time, they're moving it over to basically a small area, because if you're only touching 5%, what you will see in front of it, what the picker sees, is only that 5%. Now, actually, to add on to that, one of the things that that's unique about our system is that we're adding a buffer there as well. So you're not one-to-one coupled with the robot, which I think a lot of times when that happens, you're expecting the person to be a robot, right? If you look at typical ASRS systems, you have a person, a tote comes in, they got to pick from it. A tote comes in, they got to pick from it. If that person gets a phone call and jumps out of the way, then you have a lot of, basically the whole automation waiting on that person. What we do is we build, like Maggie mentioned, these picker walls that the robots can do independently. So we can start very early. So by the time the shift even starts, everything is ready for them to pick and to run that out in there. So maybe from your point of view, if the labor, for example, was as consistent as possible, right? To do that, right? If we can solve the labor issue, what other issues then can you see like forthcoming, or things that you think we'll start working on in the industry?
I think that it's a great question because, okay, you solve labor. We haven't really talked about accuracy.
Yeah.
So accuracy is so important because the margins are so tight in direct to consumer that if you have to reship something, you're losing money. Let's say you make $1.50 a package, $1.75, $2. You're looking for a 35 to 40% margin on any shipment that you make. If you're reshipping it, you're toast. So having the robots in place to ensure that accuracy is key to keeping any sort of margin and also keeping customers happy. Because you do have to reship it, you might have to overnight it. You're eating a lot of costs, and also just keeping your inventory pristine is so important. Because if you lose something, if you lose 6, black small shirts in a warehouse, like you're not finding them. Like you're not just gonna like eyeball that. So I think inventory integrity and accuracy is like the next big piece for any successful warehouse.
Yeah, and actually.
Go ahead, and then she's got a question. Go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead, you want to?
Oh, actually I have 2 questions.
Sure.
So first, there's still the manual intervention of pulling from the pick wall. So are you having errors with this system? And the second part is, what size product are you handling with this? The range of sizes? I mean, the SKU is a good thing, but I mean, I got big stuff, I got little stuff, so
Okay.
I'm just curious.
So I can kind of take that because that actually was similar to what I was going to say with the error rates. So for better or for worse, the robots make 0 mistakes. So when they go in and grab the container, they will grab that container. So if that container somehow contains the wrong SKU, they will grab that container. Where if you have it in a regular warehouse setting and you have a picker there and they'll say, oh, that's the wrong SKU, but the one is right next to it, they'll come to the wrong place every single time a person would to fulfill the order. In fact, they might even search within an area. That may seem like an okay thing to do sometimes, but one of the issues that starts happening is that slowly your inventory starts to kind of go out of sync, because now you're having more and more people who have to remember where did they place those inventories. So the good thing, and I think this is also the great thing about the integration that happened in real time, we're creating processes that when there is a mistake, if there is a container that comes onto the wall that contains the wrong SKU, the good thing is we know the robot did not make a mistake. So if there was a mistake there, it was a mistake that the human has made, and that it gets tracked through our systems, and now we can fulfill a job to go in and fix that in real time. So now you're fixing the mistakes, you're fixing the issues, because you're never going to avoid mistakes. Humans, we make mistakes, that's what we do. We cause chaos to the robots, in there. But the nice thing is that we're able to fix those and create processes now to fix them in real time to do that.
And I think right now, percentage-wise, so replan is obviously, what types of products? You said you have large products?
Lighting products?
Okay.
Oh, so light, our biggest clients lighting, everything from small plugs up to, large pieces. So this looks like it's all for small things, right? But I'm just curious what your error rate is and what that sweet spot for product size.
So can I ask too just how you do replen right now? Do you do a replenishment or do you have everything just in like stationary pallet locations? Like do you ever touch it twice when it comes in and then move it? Okay. So that's where the errors happen. So let's say my error rate right now without robots on pack out is like 2 to 3%. So it's not that bad. But I think the main issue is the replen. And replen, we were having issues where it's like 10 to 15%, where my person that would run replen would take the product and scan it into the wrong location. It would be caught later, so the customer never knew this happened. So that 10 to 15% is now going to go down to 2 or 3%. And my bottom line is great now because I'm not dealing with fixing all those errors. I can remove 3 people from that inventory team because it's less. So I hope that's helpful. And then when it comes to product and sizes.
Yeah, I can kind of cover it. But talking about replen, one of the things, like I said, the good thing is that inside the grid now, you can think of the errors coming from multiple locations, but one of them now from multiple places, but at least from the location of where the mistake is, right? If somebody put in replen, put the wrong product in the wrong container, that container is still being tracked. So we know instantly when it's becoming an issue and fixing it instantly. And that is something, that's still, even receiving sometimes, right? You don't even receive the right product. Somebody made a mistake. And so the more scanning, obviously in the systems, we've developed a lot of scanning in between. And that sometimes, interferes a little bit with how fast you want to get things out. But then you can check, at different points, so you can then trace it back to do that.
Yeah, the detective part about finding where the error is solved so much quicker. Like that's, and you can find the product where, like I said before, if you put that inventory somewhere else with a bad manual scan, those 6 sweaters are gone.
So from a product point of view, so our robots carry up to 40 pounds. We have some new ones that we're working on that will go up to probably around 60 pounds, and that will be probably the max that we will handle with these type of robots. The reason for it is that what we notice is a lot of the problems or a lot of the issues that our customers are having have to do with smaller items. So the bigger items, the really heavy items, they don't move as quickly as the smaller items and the smaller stuff. So we've developed a system that can really help you with the smaller items, with basically like that 80% of the randomized small items where you have to go to different locations and pick it. But at the same time, integrated with ShipHero, we're able to have other locations that are then being driven by, let's say, a forklift driver driving it, but working with the systems together to make sure that order, if somebody, let's say, ordered a big item along with like a fish tank, along with a bunch of accessories and things like that, all that will get out the door as quickly as possible and at the same time, because it doesn't help you if you pick the big item and leave it somewhere and then it takes a while, to pick the smaller items. Then you have a lot of space that is starting to being wasted. So really managing that flow, and I think with the ShipHero system, we're able to manage that pretty well. And so have the robotic system pick it at the same time as other places. That works well. Yeah, but right now we limit about to 40 pounds. The good thing is we have a pretty wide range of containers that we handle. And a little bit to Maggie's point, is we integrate into existing infrastructure. So we use all the existing shelves. So whatever shelves you have, those are the shelves we use to place the containers. And the containers themselves, we basically use corrugated because they're the cheapest. You can use plastic, but corrugated is 50 cents versus 20 cents a tote. $20 a tote. Any other questions?
All right. Well, I just want to say let's give a round of applause to Lenore and Maggie. Thank you guys for coming. And make sure to go inVia Robotics booth. It's the South Hall 3853. Thanks, you guys, again. It was great.
And come over. We actually have a picking challenge to whoever can pick the fastest. We have a bunch of prizes that we give out every day. So booth S3853, you can see the system working and you can pick with it as well.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, thank you.